This week in VCT, there's now a Tier 2 franchising happening challenges North Polaris, Edward R Indeed Gaming, and Bleed has some restricted free agents. So let's now talk about this challenges North Tier 2 franchising thing. Basically, on Twitter, it was announced on official statement that they're changing everything as follows. Quote, Today we are sharing some early but important details about the future of Challengers North Polaris. Challengers North Polaris will reset. This means all slots which are currently claimed by teams will not automatically continue into the next season. A slot in Challengers North Polaris and Eclipse can only be acquired by teams who are signed under a legal entity, the company, or an organization will need to submit documentations to Miss Games, which provides they are legitimate. 6 slots will be available through a vetting process, and 2 slots will be available through Eclipse, which starts in early November. More details will be shared later this month. Teams interested in entering Challengers North can email us via Polaris at missedgamers.gg for more details. So what does this basically mean? Basically, it is just like franchising, where I guess the difference is that they don't buy a spot. All they do is they just submit the application form onto the email, and they'll see if they accept it or not. So I guess kind of similar to the process that Riot did to start off this franchise. I'm not a fan of this whatsoever, I'll be honest. There's only like 2 or 3 orgs. Obviously the biggest one is Apex, and then I think like Formulation Gaming I'm pretty sure is another org. What other orgs are there? I mean, maybe I don't think Metasport is an org. I know the biggest one is OnlyFins, which obviously is a Finnish team. That isn't an org. So what exactly is going to happen? I don't know. I don't know if any orgs are really going to be interested in this North Polaris region. But obviously, I hope I am proving wrong because we do need a lot more organization to support these players and coaches and stuff, as this is basically their career and their livelihood on the line. So I hope that does happen. But I mean, there's only 2 orgs in Challengers North that have been Apex and Formulation Gaming. I'm not too sure if there's another one. I don't think there is, but obviously I could be wrong. But if that's the case, then it's going to be interesting. I mean, not a lot of people really gonna be fans of this, I'll be honest. So, yeah, especially like big names like OnlyFins are gonna miss out on it. So that's pretty disappointing there. But at least Durka has put up his name as he wants to or should or possibly might maybe get an org just for OnlyFins, but. Hopefully that does happen, but I don't think it will. But I'll be very surprised if it does. But I'm not a fan of this. But let me know down in the comments below what you think about this whole change for Challengers North Polaris. Bleed have announced that 4 players are now under restricted free agents, which includes Darion, Zest, Rattler, and Yay. I'm not surprised about Yay, considering that he did struggle and he was out basically of Sage 2, so I'm not surprised about that. Zest and Rattler, I mean, those were kind of subs basically for Sage 2, so I'm also not surprised there. But I guess the biggest one is Darion. I thought Darion, he played extremely well in the latter half of the season for Bleed, especially getting an A. I think he was also MVP in week 3, I believe, in Pacific. So I'm very surprised that he is actually a restricted free agent, while Crazy Guy and Scary, they're still in the lineup. I was maybe expecting a lot more of like Zach, Rattler, and Ye were the only going to be the restricted free agents, but apparently they also Dario might be asking maybe for a new team possibly. If that's the case, where could he go? Not too sure. Where could like Zest go? Where could Rattler go? I don't know. Could Ye maybe go back to North America? Possibly. But I'm interested to see what happens to Darion, especially just because I thought he was maybe one of their best players. But apparently he's now a restricted free agent, so we'll see how long that goes until he signs back with Bleed. And the final piece of news, which includes Data, who has left T1 as their coach. It really does look like T1 are going to go full Korean, which is, I mean, I'm not surprised about that. It just depends on if Xgrid does stay, because Xgrid does speak Korean, I think I'm pretty sure. So if that's the case, are they actually gonna go full Korean? I don't know what the rumors are. I remember once thing on a spreadsheet, I think I saw that Persia might be a contender. Yoma might be a contender. So there's quite a few players that T1 might be looking at, but I'm not entirely sure what's really gonna be the case. But it definitely does look like though that T1 are gonna go fully Korean, which is maybe better, but it has been disappointing, especially players like Rossi, who was maybe the most consistent player in that team, is now out of the team and now possibly maybe out of a job. I do hope that he does land back on his feet. Could side player maybe leave as obviously he's now a restricted free agent for the team. But yeah, I'm interested to see what the changes are. Hopefully, Data does come back into Valorant. I probably most likely he will be, but most likely it will maybe be might maybe be for a tier 2 team, because I don't think maybe even for tier 1 maybe for Americas, but most likely he might maybe land tier 2. Let's now talk about champs first off with Americas and Sentinels, as they played 2 games against DRX and Edward Gaming. They won against DRX but lost against Edward Gaming. Zecton was MVP on both of them. I mean, this was just completely like okay, these 2 games were like completely different from each other. The DRX game, Sentinels look like a championship contender. They look so good. Yes, Sunset was a bit of an interesting one, considering that they went to overtime a couple of times. So, but it was a bit sloppy there. But it was still a great Valorant on Sunset, especially. It was a great game as a whole. For against DRX. The Edward Gaming one was incredibly sloppy. Map 1, amazing for Sentinels. Obviously won. But only just. However, the next 2 maps were just shocking from from Sentinels. It was just shocking. I think on the 3rd map, which I'm pretty sure was Lotus, I believe, I think they were like 6-1 or some point. Like Edward Gaming had a 5-round lead over Sentinels. To be fair, they almost brought it back, but it just wasn't enough. I mean, Edward Gaming, they just played better than Sentinels. It's just a fact. They really did. And now Edward Gaming are looking like absolute contenders to win the whole thing. But for Sentinels, it was still a good showing against Edward Gaming. It's just that they were just very sloppy in different plays and post-plan situations. But they will be versing against Fnatic, which is going to be an absolute banging game to watch. I'm pretty sure happening today. So it's going to be a great game to watch that game. One of a couple teams who has been eliminated from champs, which includes G2 Esports, as they play against both Leviathan and Fnatic and lost both of them. Jonah P was MVP against Lev, while Trent was MVP against Fnatic. Yeah, I mean, a bit of a disappointment for G2 as a team that I had a lot of high hopes on. I really thought that they were going to be top 4 contenders, like what they showed in Master Shanghai, but they really weren't. Like, to be fair, they did play against maybe the 2 fan favorites of the League to win champs, being Lev and Fnatic, so I'm not surprised about that. But God, they were crap. I'll be honest, they were just. There was definitely some good moments. Jonah P had some good moments. Icy was really good as well, but it just doesn't. It doesn't really show the fact that they were a bit sloppy, and especially against Fnatic, where they kind of weren't playing with the tempo that they're used to playing, like really slowly. They weren't really playing like that because Fnatic would just constantly just play them. And obviously Chronicle with that amazing end of the game as well on Bind really just show G2 season. Like, had some great moments, but would falter on like very high pressure moments. That's basically how G2 was. So yeah, I'm not too sure about that, I'll be honest, with G2, because I mean they're a very good team, but now they're out of champs. It is disappointing, but hopefully they do bounce back next year. But I won't be surprised if there's maybe some possible roster changes in that team. Still the fan favorites, which are Leviathan, who played 3 games this week, which includes Vitality, G2, and Heretics, and won 3 of them. Mezina was MVP against Vitality, Com was MVP against G2, while Aspas was MVP against Heretics. Shocking behold, Mezina was MVP after I uploaded that video with Mezina allegations. But along that, obviously, Leviathan, they look really good. A bit sloppy, but really good still. I mean, the Heretics game was incredibly close, went to overtime, I think 2 times, I'm pretty sure, in Icebox. And I think the next one was Blind or Lotus, I believe, and that went like 13-10, or maybe it was Abyss, I can't remember. but it was still a very good game for Leviathan on all three games. I'll be honest. I mean, the Vitality one, I'm pretty sure they just narrowly won. G2, they absolutely dismantled them. Then Heretics was a very close game there, but 11 are back on foot. They're now into the top four, so they have a legitimate chance of winning the whole thing, which is great. And I think they'll be also going to the new arena. I don't know what the arena's called, basically for the top four contenders. So that's definitely going to add a little bit more pressure onto this team, but I expect them to be in the grand finals at least. Moving now on to China, and all good things must come to an end, especially for Trace Esports. Oh, this is so sad to watch. They played two games against Edward Gaming and DRX, and they lost both of them. Kai was MVP against EDG, while Feng Feng was MVP against DRX. Yeah, I mean, there was no way in hell that they were actually going to win against both of those teams. Just no way. Definitely maybe against Edward Gaming if a miracle happened, considering that both of them have played against each other quite a lot domestically. The DRX one, I'm sorry, but DRX was just on a whole different level against Trace Esports. I mean, they just absolutely destroyed them on every map that they played. And it's sad because Trace were a storybook team. And it's kind of as well the same fate that Billy Gaming had last year. So I guess when a Chinese team that we all weren't expecting to be in the playoffs, and expect them to basically bow out immediately from the playoffs. So I guess that's something to remember. But Trace, I mean, they had a phenomenal season. Was the third best team in China. We just know that for a fact they were. And for them to make it to the playoffs in front of FPX and Bilibili Gaming is a massive achievement. So even though yes, they did bow out of the playoffs like very like early on, I think they should still be very proud of what they have accomplished. Mr. Edwards are gaming especially 3 matches this week against Paper Rex, Trace, and Sentinels, and they won all 3 of them. Smokey was MVP against Paper Rex, Kang Kang was MVP against Trace, and Shishi was MVP against Sentinels. They have now qualified into the top 4, which means that they are now the highest Chinese team to ever be in this position. Wow, what a moment from Edward Gaming. I mean, they just look so good so far. I mean, Simon had definitely had some great moments. I have to give Simon some props just because that he's obviously the newest addition to the team. I was a bit worried to see how Simon will go in this team of EDG as the best team in China, but he has fit so well into this team that it feels like nothing has changed. Like it feels like Hao Dong is still playing, even though we know that he's now the assistant coach for the team. Like it still feels like that he's still playing, which is amazing. So I have to give shouts to Simon. He's been phenomenal. Smoggy has maybe been the most consistent player throughout Edward Gaming's run so far in champs. He has been constantly near the top or at the top of the leaderboard for this team, doing amazing clutches, 2Ks, 3Ks, it doesn't even matter. Smokey's always a scary player, and maybe the most underrated player, in my opinion, in Edward Gaming. Like obviously you will remember Kang Kang. You will possibly maybe remember nobody, Shishu, Simon most recently as well as he's the most recent pickup, but everyone will probably most likely forget Smoggy, as he's not really a flashy player, but holy hell, he is maybe the most consistent player in this team. So I do have to give props to him because he's been amazing throughout this whole tournament, and we'll see how they go in the top 4 against Leviathan. I think it's going to be a great game. It's going to be a great game to watch, but hopefully it'll be a good game and not just a stomp. Moving out to EMEA, first off with Team Vitality, as they did lose their only game against Leviathan. Safe was MVP, which means they're now eliminated from champs on via groups. Yeah, I mean, maybe I had a bit too much high hopes on the team, I'll be honest. Just maybe. Just because I have a little soft spot for Vitality, just because they're always a dark horse team. And I mean, they definitely showed their promise. They definitely did. But I feel like everyone else on the team wasn't really locked in. I guess we can say safe, and Trex were definitely locked in, especially. But Kicks had some decent moments. Runner was a bit quiet. Sender, very quiet, but that's just because he's the IGL, so I'm not really surprised about that. But it kind of shows that, I mean, teamwork makes the dream work, and Vitality kind of stumbled there, and it is a bit disappointing there, considering this maybe might be Safe's final tournament if he does retire, as obviously he has talked about many times that he was considering retirement, but I think some of his friends like convinced him to not retire, and now he's here with Vitality. So, but we'll see what Safe's future is. I do hope that he does return because I love watching the guy. He's a phenomenal duelist player. Even though for some reason Stage 1 he was playing the initiator role for some reason. But now that he's back on now the duelist, basically a role that he's much more familiar with, and in my opinion a lot better than Runner. Like obviously I know Runner was a prospect in for Vitality, but he didn't really show that little spark that everyone was really like talking about. So yeah, we're safe now in the duelist roles. Well, it's maybe a best decision, I'll be honest, for the team, but it is disappointing that they did bow out pretty early on, but it's still a pretty decent showing there from this team. Team Heretics, they played 2 games against Fnatic and Leviathan. They won against Fnatic but lost against Leviathan. Reigns was MVP against Fnatic, while Miniboo was MVP against Leviathan. I mean, Reigns, he had some crazy ass lineups that has helped this team, especially. He's maybe one of the most underrated sovers in the world in Valorant. I don't think a lot of people really talk about him because everyone's like talking about like Chronicle or Saucy or who else you could really say. I'll be honest on that role, but Reigns should definitely be up there as one of the best sovers in Valorant in the world. I should say, just because of the amount of impact that like he has on each round as Sova is just night and day. It really is. I mean, it shows that he has a lot of experience on the character, and as well he has a lot of lineups as well that he can use for post-plant situations, which has helped his team immensely, especially against Fnatic. I mean, he was just so good against Fnatic. The Lev one was a bit interesting considering it was very close. Miniboo, he was pretty good. I mean, maybe this might be I think this might be the first time I've talked about him in MVPs for champs, and he's been pretty quiet so far this tournament, but he was very good against Leviathan, so I give him that. Boo, he continues to impress me as the IGL, doing some great moments, so that's a great showing that from him. Benji and Root, they've been kind of quiet so far, but still very impressive from this team. We'll see how they go against DRX as that is the next team that they'll be versing. So we'll see if they do go home or if they continue on their run. Fnatic next, as they play 2 games against Team Heretics and G2. They lost against Heretics but won against G2. Dirk was MVP against Heretics while Althea was MVP against G2. I guess the dye hair worked for Althea even if they did dye his eyebrows by accident. But either way, it was a great showing there from Fnatic against G2. Heretics was very floppy. They looked so out of place. It was quite shocking to see of how out of place they were. But I mean, the G2 one was definitely a wake-up call for this team. They played really good. They played together really well. It was also Grunkle's birthday, I'm pretty sure, and he just popped off, and especially on Bind where he did that amazing 3K clutch while being blinded to win them the game. So it was a great showing from this team. It was great. I mean, Althea on the ISO is still incredibly scary. I mean, he's definitely maybe one of the best ISOs in the world, just considering that no one else really plays ISO. And Fnatic, they use ISO very well on Haven, so give him that. Yoru as well on for Durka, phenomenal. It's been great, and even if IC was trying to create some space for his team on G2, Durka still comes out and still gets like a 3K or even a 2K to help Fnatic to get over the line. So, well, they are going to be versing their arch rival Sentinels, who they did have a bit of a history, especially in the past in Valorant, but we'll see how that goes. But just like I said in the Fnatic segment, this should be a very good game to watch. Moving now to Pacific, and DRX played 2 games against Sentinels and Trace. They won against Trace but lost against Sentinels. Flashback was MVP against Sentinels while Buzz was MVP against Trace. Yeah, I feel like DRX kind of choked against Sentinels. They had a lot of moments that they could have actually won on Sunset, but didn't, obviously. They kind of choked then. But the Trace one was definitely a great job from everyone, I'll be honest, on this team. especially on Abyss where Mako was basically like big braining everyone and would just block the suck from Astra. So that was definitely big brain moment for Mako as the IGL. So that probably maybe contributed to DRX's win against Trace, but it's still great showing from this team. I still think they should be top 4 contenders. They are versing Heretics, so maybe they could be done in front of the home crowd, which would be very disappointing considering that DRX is the only Pacific team to be in the playoffs. The only one. No other Pacific team is in other than DRX. So DRX has a lot of weight on their shoulders to carry this region. I know Achilles is screaming it and basically screaming right now, hoping that DRX will continue their lower bracket run, but obviously it could easily end just because of how well Heretics has been playing. Just because, but DRX so far been looking good so far, but the Heretics game is going to be a true challenge for this team. And the final team from this video is PaperX. They did lose against Edward Gaming. Something was MVP, meaning they're now eliminated from champs. Yes, the runner-up from last year's champs in Los Angeles is now out via groups. I mean, that is just a massive turnaround from where they were last year to now this year. So they have definitely took a massive step back. What could they do? Definitely maybe some roster changes maybe on the line for this team, as this is a very disappointing result from this team. I mean, last time they were grouped, it was 2022. So I guess if it's an even number, they're going to be grouped. But if it's an odd number of years, look out for them to be contenders. That's basically what I'm getting here. But I mean, it's still very disappointing from this team. I'll be honest. I mean, I expect them to be in the playoffs at least, maybe not contenders, as there's quite a lot of contenders like Genji who also bowed out from groups, like Sentinels, Heretics, Fnatic, now Edward Gaming. There's quite a lot of teams that could definitely win champs, and I don't think PaperX is going to be one of them just because of the amount of firepower every single other team has. So it is a bit of a disappointing result from PaperX, but maybe it's kind of where everyone expects them to be. But at the same time, PaperX really struggled at champs in South Korea. And that is really about it for this episode of This Week in VCT. Now, like and now, guys, to like, comment, and subscribe. It would really help me, especially on this channel. Now, catch you guys next time for the next episode, or maybe even the next episode, or maybe even as well in the next video as well on the channel. Hope you guys have a great day. Take care. Goodbye.